Avoidants operate on a precise, unconscious strategy. They maintain control by keeping things off balance. They need you to feel just insecure enough to stay engaged, but they make sure to pull back the moment intimacy gets too real. By keeping you hovering in a space of almost, they ensure you remain the one chasing, the one questioning, and the one working overtime to bridge the gap. They rely on your anxiety to feel powerful, because as long as you are focused on fixing the relationship, they don't have to face their own internal void. They essentially use your patience as a safety net, confident that no matter how much they pull away, you will be there to calm the storm and pick up the pieces. But then, the dynamic shatters because the super empath eventually hits a breaking point. Not a loud one, but a silent one. You stop searching for the why behind their distance, and you stop trying to translate their silence into a hidden message of love. You realize that your efforts to heal them are only draining your own spirit. And in that moment, something inside you simply switches off. You stop fighting the silence, you stop chasing the connection, you stop trying to be their bridge. You decide that your energy is far too valuable to be poured into someone who is determined to remain empty. This isn't an explosion of anger or a dramatic confrontation. It is something far more disarming, total, calculated indifference. When you stop reacting, you effectively remove the oxygen from their game. They are so accustomed to the dance of pursuit and withdrawal that your sudden stillness creates a void they don't know how to fill. They check for your reaction. They look for the usual signs of your distress, but they find nothing. For the avoidant, that silence is not a sign of peace. It is a terrifying, suffocating realization that they have lost their hold over you. The person who used to provide the emotional stability they desperately needed has simply walked away, leaving them completely alone with the very thing they were trying to hide from, themselves. The moment you fully detach, you effectively delete the script the avoidant has been reading from for months or even years. You stop the endless loop of chasing them when they pull away. You stop begging for closure that they aren't equipped to give, and you drop your end of the emotional tug-of-war. By simply letting go of the rope, you leave them standing there holding nothing but their own confusion. For an avoidant, this creates an immediate, hollow vacuum. Their entire identity in the relationship was anchored in the silent assurance that you would remain a constant, reliable source of validation. They viewed your patience as a permanent fixture, a safety net that allowed them to drift in and out of the relationship whenever they felt overwhelmed or scared, knowing you would be there waiting when they decided to return. When that security vanishes, they don't know who they are anymore. They are suddenly staring across a table at someone who doesn't look at them with desperation or wait for their text, but instead looks at them with complete, calm autonomy. This is the moment their internal alarm bells start ringing. At first, they will lean heavily into their defense mechanisms to mask the fear. They will perform a victory lap of sorts, acting completely unbothered to their friends, or even telling themselves that this is what they wanted all along, a sense of relief, a return to their independence. They convince themselves that they are finally free from the pressure of your expectations. They try to keep the mask of indifference firmly in place, acting as if the void you left is just more room for them to breathe. However, this relief is a fragile illusion that crumbles faster than they expect. The reality is that your presence acted as a grounding rod for their chaotic emotional state. Even if they never admitted it, they relied on your empathy to stabilize them. You were the safe harbor that kept them from drifting too far into their own darkness. Now that you are gone, that anchor is severed. The silence they once claimed to desire suddenly feels oppressive and heavy. They find themselves sitting in the quiet of their own home, surrounded by a hollow emptiness they can no longer ignore. The silence that used to feel like freedom now echoes with the truth of their isolation. Without your light, They are forced to confront the stark, cold reality of their own emotional world, a place they have spent their whole life trying to escape. They start to realize that their quote-unquote independence was never actually about being free. It was about being defended. When they finally stop trying to convince themselves otherwise, they are left facing the terrifying weight of their own loneliness. And for the first time, they understand that the person they pushed away was the only thing making them feel human. The defining moment for a super empath is the realization that the avoidance coldness isn't a reflection of your worth, but a direct symptom of their internal terror. You stop taking the distance personally because you finally see it for what it truly is, a frantic, panicked reaction to the threat of real intimacy. They view closeness as a trap, so they run before they can be caught. When you understand that their withdrawal is just a defense mechanism, a wall built to protect a scared small part of them, the power dynamics shift instantly. The moment you stop begging for their validation, you break the chains that kept you tethered to their mood swings. You cease being a participant in their games and become an observer, and that shift makes you completely untouchable. Detachment in this state is not a loud, dramatic exit. You aren't slamming doors, sending long manifestos, or demanding explanations because you no longer need them to understand your pain. You simply stop investing. You might remain polite, civil, and even friendly, but your soul has checked out. You are no longer there for them to feed off of. You have pulled your emotional energy back into your own life, leaving them with nothing but the thin, hollow shell of your presence. To an avoidant, this is far more jarring than a breakup fight or a tearful argument. They are master tacticians at managing conflict. They know exactly how to dodge accusations, block out emotional scenes, and push people away when things get too heated. But they have absolutely no defense against someone who is not fighting. When you refuse to engage in the battle, you strip them of their armor. They are waiting for the push and pull, the drama, or the attempt to fix them. That is the language they speak. When you deny them that reaction, you leave them standing in a void of their own creation. The silence becomes a mirror. Without your energy to distract them, they have no choice but to sit in the uncomfortable reality of who they are and what they have lost. They are forced to stare into the mirror and finally confront the loneliness they spent years trying to outrun. By staying calm, consistent, and emotionally unavailable to them, you stop being their punching bag and start being the catalyst for their deepest, most painful realization. You haven't just left. You have outgrown the need to be anything to them at all. At the core of every avoidant is a deeply buried, paralyzing fear of being unwanted, even if they spend their entire lives pretending they don't need anyone. Your detachment acts as a mirror that reflects this vulnerability back at them with brutal clarity. For a long time, their influence over you was their security blanket. Knowing they could pull you back with a single word or a crumb of affection made them feel powerful and desired. But the moment you detach, that influence evaporates. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer watching for their name to pop up on your screen, and you are no longer centering your day around their availability. Suddenly, you aren't just not chasing them, you are moving on with your life as if they were never the main character in the first place. This triggers a frantic sense of irrelevance that they cannot handle, because they cannot process the idea that you have successfully moved past them. They will almost always start testing the perimeter. You'll notice the classic signs. They might suddenly appear on your social media stories, leave a random reaction to an old post, or send a low-effort casual "hey" or "how have you been" text. Do not mistake these gestures for a sudden change of heart or a genuine desire to reconcile. They aren't reaching out because they've finally realized your value or because they want to share their life with you again. They are reaching out because they are addicted to the feeling of being in control. They are checking to see if they can still get a rise out of you, if they can still make your heart race, or if they can still force you back into that familiar loop of uncertainty. They are terrified that they have become invisible to you, and they need to confirm that they still have a grip on your emotions. When you remain unbothered, you deliver the ultimate reality check. You show them that your silence is not a petty game of cat and mouse or a punishment designed to make them feel bad. It is, quite simply, your new standard of living. It is the peace you fought for, the calm you deserve, and the boundary you have finally anchored in stone. By walking away, you strip away their favorite lie, the idea that their coldness was independence or strength. You force them to see it for what it truly is, fear dressed up as a shield. They realize that their wall didn't protect them, it only isolated them. They pushed away the only person who was willing to truly see them, and now they are left sitting in the wreckage of a dynamic they destroyed because they were too scared to be vulnerable. The realization hits them that while they were busy playing games to keep you at arm's length, they were actually pushing away their best chance at a real connection. And by the time they want that connection back, you have already moved on to a life where they no longer have a seat at the table. It is absolutely vital that you reframe your mindset regarding this separation. Your detachment is not an act of hostility or a calculated weapon meant to hurt the avoidant. It is a profound, non-negotiable step in your personal evolution. For the longest time, you were likely operating from a place of self-abandonment, sacrificing your own needs, your own emotional stability, and your own peace of mind in a desperate attempt to nurture someone who was fundamentally incapable of receiving it. You were trying to fill a cup that had a hole in the bottom, pouring all of your empathy, kindness, and light into a person whose primary survival mechanism was to reject it. Eventually, you reached the clarity required to understand that attempting to coax vulnerability out of someone who is terrified of intimacy is like trying to water a stone. No matter how much life you offer, it will never grow, it will never bloom, and it will never love you back in the way you truly deserve. By choosing to detach, you are finally reclaiming the power you surrendered so long ago. You are taking back the energy that you spent obsessing over their moods, decoding their silence, and walking on eggshells to avoid triggering their defensive walls. When you walk away, you aren't merely leaving a person or a failing relationship. You are making the ultimate commitment to choose yourself. You are declaring that your internal peace is far more valuable than the potential of someone who refuses to meet you halfway. This is the precise moment the cycle of codependency finally snaps. You are stepping out of the role of the fixer and stepping into the role of the protector of your own spirit. While the avoidant remains trapped within the fortress of their own walls, continuing to push away the very love they secretly crave, you are moving toward true freedom. This isn't about getting revenge or watching them suffer. It is about reaching a point of such total self-respect that the games they play no longer have the power to touch you. You have arrived at a place where you no longer need their validation to feel complete, and you no longer need their presence to feel safe. When you reach this level of emotional maturity, you aren't just over them. You have transcended the entire dynamic. You have evolved past the need to save others at the cost of your own soul. In the end, this journey wasn't about them at all. It was about the beautiful, difficult process of learning that the most powerful thing you can ever do is to honor your own worth enough to walk away from anything that makes you question it. You are finally free, and that freedom is the greatest reward you could ever earn. Ultimately, the dance between a super empath and an avoidant ends not with a bang, but with the quiet clarity of your own awakening. You realize that your value was never dependent on their capacity to love you, and your peace was never something they had the power to give or take away. By choosing to stop fighting for a connection that wasn't being reciprocated, you didn't just end a cycle. You stepped into your own strength. You are no longer defined by your patience or your ability to withstand emotional distance. Instead, you are defined by your refusal to settle for anything less than emotional safety and true, transparent connection. The silence you've chosen is not an ending. It is a new beginning where you are finally the priority in your own life. If this resonated with you and you are ready to stop settling for crumbs, it is time to take the next step in your own healing journey. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into breaking toxic patterns and reclaiming your personal power. If you felt the sting of these dynamics, I want to hear your story. Drop a comment below and let me know how you're choosing yourself today. Your voice matters, and by sharing your experience, you help others realize they aren't alone. Let's keep growing, stay focused on your peace, and move forward with the strength you deserve.